Trezaki Show. I'm the Trev. That's too sweet. Anyway, continuing with retired numbers. And today, we're going to talk about the second number retired by the New York Rangers, but also the first number for the Rangers retired in the honor of a goalie. They have three goaltenders with retired numbers in New York, at this moment anyway. And today, we're talking essentially about the model of consistency for the Rangers in the net, from the mid-60s to about the mid-70s. In terms of the stand-up goalie, or the goalie who played in the stand-up position, today's topic was one of, if not the best, to play in the stand-up position. We'll get a lot into it. Today, we're talking about the number 1, which is worn by Ed Giacomin. So let's talk about it. Alright, so Ed Giacomin's 10 and a bit year career with the New York Rangers began on May 18th, 1965. That was when Giacomin was acquired from the Providence Reds of the AHL, and conveniently just in time for the 1965-66 season. His first NHL win would come in his third NHL game, winning on the road against the Boston Bruins, but really that would probably be one of the few positives to come out of Giacomin's rookie year. Now, in 35 games, he put on an 8-20-6 record with a 3.68 goals against average and a .874 save percentage. Very ouch. Matter of fact, Giacomin wouldn't even finish the season in the NHL, as for the last 7 games of the season, he was sent back down to the AHL, obviously for some conditioning. But it is worth noting, beyond this point, for the 65-66 season, this would be the only time in Giacomin's time with the Rangers as a full-time starter that the Rangers would miss the playoffs. The 1966-67 season would be a much different story than his rookie year. And his first win of the season also turned to be his first career shutout as well, holding the Toronto Maple Leafs scoreless on October 23rd, 1966. And it's also worth noting he would play his first of 6 NHL All-Star games as a Ranger this season. Now, throughout the season, Giacomin would have 2 occasions where he would post back-to-back shutouts. And in 68 games, Giacomin would put up a 30-27-11 record, much better in the wins department, while adding a 2.61 goals against and a .917 save percentage. Now, it's also worth pointing out the 27 losses and the 11 ties were career highs, as well as his league-leading 9 shutouts. So, there's that. It's also worth pointing out that his 30 wins led the NHL amongst wins by a goalie. But more importantly, the Rangers made the playoffs for the first time since 1962. But that playoff run would only last 4 games before being eliminated by the eventual Stanley Cup finalists in the Montreal Canadiens. Now, Giacomin would add a 3.41 goals against average and a .896 save percentage in those 4 games. But given the season Giacomin had, he was nominated to the NHL's first All-Star team for the first time in his career, and finished as a runner-up in Hart Trophy voting, losing to eventual recipient Stan Mikita. A 1967-68 season would essentially be more of the same for Giacomin, and that is also with expansion and realignment. Now, the Rangers would finish second in the East Division, with Giacomin playing in 66 games, leading the league in wins again with 36, along with 20 losses and 10 ties, and a league-leading 8 shutouts. And he would also add a 2.44 goals against and a .915 save percentage. So getting really good at that save percentage. Now again, the Rangers would make the playoffs, with Giacomin even getting his first playoff win. However, the Rangers would be eliminated in 6 games by the Chicago Blackhawks, with Giacomin putting up a 2-4 record, as well as a 3.41 goals against average and a .896 save percentage. It's kind of ouch. When it comes to playoff time, that save percentage takes a dip. Now, for his regular season, though, Giacomin would earn his second his first second NHL All-Star Team nomination. Almost said his second first. No, it was his first second. Dyslexia kicking in at that moment. The 1968-69 season would be another great year for Giacomin, essentially picking up right where he left off from the year prior. Now, the Rangers would finish third in the East Division, with Giacomin playing in 70 games, with a league-leading and career-best 37 wins, as well as 23 losses and 7 ties, to go with 7 shutouts, a 2.55 goals against average, and a .912 save percentage. It's a very solid year. The Rangers would again make the playoffs, but much like 1967, they would again run into the Montreal Canadiens, and much like 1967, they would lose in 4 straight. Only this time, the Canadiens were the eventual Stanley Cup champions, with Giacomin putting up a 0-3 record, with a 3.33 goals against average and a .853 save percentage. Ouch! But for the regular season, Giacomin would earn his second NHL second All-Star Team nomination. See, I said it right this time. The 1969-70 season would be yet another season of Giacomin continuing to be a workhorse, appearing in another 70 games, with the Rangers making the playoffs on a tiebreaker of a finish with the previous season's Stanley Cup champs, the guys that knocked them out, the Montreal Canadiens. Now, thanks in large part to outscoring the Canadiens in total goals by the end of the year by only 2, the Rangers would make the playoffs on a tiebreaker of goals 4. And the defending Stanley Cup champs, well, they couldn't defend their Stanley Cup. Sucks to be them, right? Giacomin would add a 35, 21, and 14 record to go with a 2.36 goals against average and a .916 save percentage with 6 shutouts. Now, the playoffs would, as previously had been, a short ride, with the Rangers losing in 6 games to, again, the eventual Stanley Cup champs, the Boston Bruins, with Giacomin posting up a 2-3 record in the 5 games played with a 4.07 goals against and a .858 save percentage. That playoff success is not being a good thing for Giacomin or the Rangers. But for his regular season, Giacomin would be nominated to the NHL's second NHL All-Star Team for the third and final time in his career. The 1970-71 season would see Giacomin finally cave and be one of the last goalies to don the face mask. But we also see Giacomin start to split the load in net, sharing the duties with Gilles Villemure. I hope I'm saying that right. Which turned out to be a great decision for Giacomin and for the Rangers. Now, the Rangers behind their tandem would have finished second in the East Division, with Giacomin contributing a 27, 10, and 7 record with a 2.16 goals against and a .922 save percentage. So again, that goals against the save percentage are amazing in the regular season, with a league-leading 8 shutouts. And of course, the Rangers would make the playoffs, and even managed to escape the quarterfinals this time, defeating the Toronto Maple Leafs in a very close 6-game overtime series. But for as much as they advanced, they seemed to fall back. They would lose in an almost lopsided 7 games to Stanley Cup finalists, the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, Giacomin would add a 7-5 record in 12 playoff games, with a much better than last season 2.21 goals against average and a .913 save percentage. So he worked on it come playoff time. For the regular season, though, Giacomin and Villemure they were both awarded the Vezina Trophy, which was at the time awarded to the goaltender, or in this case, goaltenders, who have the best team goaltending record. So at least come away with some hardware out of all this, right? On top of that, Giacomin was also nominated to NHL's first All-Stars team for the second and final time in his career. The 71-72 season might have been the best season the Rangers ever had with Giacomin in the lineup. Not so much in the way of statistics or anything like that, because you got to remember, Giacomin ain't playing 60-70 games no more. But more so for how far the Rangers went this season. Now, the Rangers have finished second in the East Division, 10 points behind the Boston Bruins for first, with Giacomin adding a 24-10-9 record in 44 games played with a 2.70 goals against average and a .900 save percentage, with only one shutout this season. Very uncharacteristic, but that happens when you get older, right? Now in the playoffs, the Rangers would go 6 games with the Montreal Canadiens in what could be called a very evenly matched series, before managing to sweep the Chicago Blackhawks on the way to the first Stanley Cup Final for the Rangers since 1950. 42 years in between cup runs. Now, unfortunately for the Rangers, they would face the Boston Bruins team that had just won the Stanley Cup 2 years prior, and even eliminated the Rangers on the way to the 1970 Stanley Cup. And, between Phil Esposito, Bobby Orr, the Rangers were just lucky enough to make it to 6 games before ultimately the Bruins decided to pull the plug and eliminate them for their second cup in 2 years. Now, Giacomin would add a 6-4 record in 10 playoff games played, with a 2.70 goals against average and a .902 save percentage. So he's keeping it low, but at this point, the big prize escaped him. The 72-73 season would see Giacomin playing his 6th and final NHL All-Star game as a Ranger. Now, the Rangers would finish the season 3rd in the East Division, with Giacomin adding a 26-11-6 record in 43 games played, with a 2.91 goals against average and a .899 save percentage, with 4 shutouts. So that save percentage is getting a little unmanageable again. But in the playoffs, the goal for the Rangers was obviously to make it back to the Stanley Cup Finals, and maybe even win it for a change. But ironically enough, the Rangers would play the Bruins in the quarterfinals, the same Bruins that beat them for the Stanley Cup the year prior. And ultimately, in what should have been a bigger challenge than what it was, the Rangers ended up eliminating the Bruins in 5, with Giacomin even entering his first playoff shutout along the way. Ultimately, though, the luck didn't extend beyond the semifinals, as the Rangers would be eliminated in 5 games by the eventual Stanley Cup finalists, once again, the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, Giacomin would add a 5-4 record in 10 games with a 2.70 goals against and a .902 save percentage with 1 shutout, as we had previously mentioned. The 1973-74 season would be Giacomin's last good statistical year, helping the Rangers finish 3rd in the East Division while posting a 30-15-10 record in 56 games played. And this was with a 2.91 goals against average and a .899 save percentage. So the save percentage really hasn't changed, with 5 shutouts along the way. Now in the playoffs, the Rangers would manage to make short work of the Montreal Canadiens, eliminating them in 6 games before, well, you know the drill, losing in 7 games to the eventual Stanley Cup champs, the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, Giacomin would add a 7-6 record in 13 games played with a 2.82 goals against average and a .895 goals against. So, again, we're still below 9, but at this point, I don't know if there's much saving that goals against average. The 1974-75 season would see Giacomin limited to only 37 games this season due to injury, but he would contribute a 13-12-8 record with a 3.48 goals against average and a .870 save percentage with only 1 shutout. So the numbers are getting bad, but at the same point we are entering an era where goal scoring is really on the rise. The Rangers did finish 2nd in the Patrick division, but the playoff run, well, it would only last 3 games, after losing in 3 games to the New York Islanders in the preliminary round, with Giacomin going 0 for 2 with a 2.79 goals against average and a .889 save percentage. So, yeah, the prime is long gone at this point, I think. The 1975-76 season would be Giacomin's last season with the New York Rangers, and really it wouldn't be a terribly long run, with the Rangers looking to make some changes in the lineup to get that spark back, to getting them back to the Stanley Cup Finals, and with Giacomin starting the season 0-3-1 in his first 4 games, he would ultimately be placed on waivers and claimed by the other team that was interested in acquiring him way back in 1965, the Detroit Red Wings, on October 31st, 1975. Now, ironically enough, his first game as a member of the Detroit Red Wings came 2 nights later against the same New York Rangers that just finished placing him on waivers. Detroit would win that game 6-4. And that's the story of Ed Giacomin and the number 1 during his time with the New York Rangers. So let's talk some numbers. Alright, as far as regular season numbers are concerned, 539 games played, with 267 wins, 172 losses, 89 ties, with a career 9.905 save percentage and a 2.74 goals against average. Add that to 49 shutouts, also managing to get 8 assists along the way and accumulate 64 penalty minutes. Now, as far as the playoffs is concerned, 65 games played, 29 wins, 35 losses, a career .897 save percentage, and a 2.83 goals against average, to go with 1 shutout and 23 penalty minutes. He was a representative for the New York Rangers during 6 NHL All-Star games, competing in 1967, 1968, 1969, 1970, 1971, and 1973. He was nominated to the NHL's first All-Star team twice in 1967 and 1971, as well as being nominated to the NHL's All-Star team, second NHL All-Star team 3 times in 1968, 1969, and 1970. He is also a recipient of the 1971 Vezina Trophy. He was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1987 and has a number retired by the New York Rangers on March 15th, 1989. So, at the time of his retirement, or his being claimed off waivers by Detroit, he was the Rangers' all-time leader in wins and shutouts. So, there's that. So, I'll give you my opinion on the guy. Now, obviously, Giacomin was a little bit before my time, probably a little bit before your time too, but if you're lucky enough to watch him play, as I said at the beginning, you were watching one of the best stand-up goalies there ever was. And as far as stick-handling goalies at the same time, the guy could handle the stick pretty well. He could pass the puck when he needed to. As far as keeping it out of the net, well, I mean, his 49 shutouts as a Ranger, he did eventually eclipse 50, not as a Ranger. But his 49 shutouts alone tells you how good in net he was. And this was at the height of NHL expansion. This was the height of NHL scoring increasing. And he was a stand-up goalie. So he held his own. And I'm sure if age and injuries didn't do their thing, maybe he could have took the Rangers a little bit further during his time. Who knows? Hard to say. Could have at least kept them in the playoff spot, I'm sure. But as far as being a good goalie to not win the cup, Giacomin's one of them. Solid and dependable, and kept the Rangers competitive his entire time as a New York Ranger. Now that can't be bad. It's another one of them Trev's hockey shows. I want to thank you for tuning in. Don't think I don't appreciate the gesture, especially if you've made it to this point. And if you have made it to this point, just know that I am very thankful you're here. I mean, we're making that push to 500, so I mean, you know what I'm talking about. If you like what I'm putting out, hit that like button. You want to tell me you were here? Hit that like button. You digging my stuff? Hit that like button. If you want to, that red button that says subscribe all over it, like I said, we're making that push to 500. It'll make you feel good. It'll make me feel good. It'll help my algorithm out something fierce. So let's make that happen. If you want, you can find the link to my Facebook page in the description below. We're moving forward. Well, we've got a lot more retired numbers to talk about. And like I said, this is the second for the Rangers. There's more that the Rangers have. But either way, in the meantime, and in between time, be looking for more videos from Trev. Later.